The year was 2743, and humanity had reached farther into the cosmos than ever before. Colonies dotted moons, asteroids, and distant planets, their domed cities glowing like beacons against the endless blackness of space. Yet for all its technological prowess and expansionist zeal, humanity remained alone, a single candle flickering in an unresponsive void. Dr. Ilara Voss stood on the observation deck of the Aurora station, her fingers tracing the cool glass, as she gazed at Earth's blue-green orb spinning silently below. She often came here to think, to escape the sterile hum of laboratories and the weight of expectations pressing down on her shoulders. It wasn't just her own ambitions that burdened her, it was the collective hope of billions resting on her work. For decades, humanity had scoured the stars for signs of life, broadcasting signals, launching probes, and listening intently for any whisper from beyond. But the universe had stayed silent. Ilara sighed, turning away from the window. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, sharp cheekbones, tired eyes framed by dark circles, and hair pulled back into a no-nonsense bun. She looked every bit the scientist consumed by her mission. Yet beneath her composed exterior churned a storm of doubt. What if they were wrong? What if there truly was nothing out there? Still brooding? A voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to see Cale Voss leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. Her younger brother bore little resemblance to the ambitious astrophysicist he'd once been. Gone were the sharp suits and polished demeanor. Now his scruffy beard and worn jacket spoke of someone who'd given up chasing dreams. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I'm not brooding," Ilara said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking." Cale raised an eyebrow. "About what? How many more ways you can fail?" His words stung, but Ilara didn't let it show. "I'm not failing, Cale. We're closer than ever. You know that." "Closer to what?" Shot back. "Wasting more resources on a fantasy?" "Ilara, it's been centuries. If there was anyone out there, don't you think they'd have answered by now?" She clenched her fists but kept her voice steady. "That's exactly why we need to keep trying. Maybe we haven't asked the right question yet." Cale snorted. "Or maybe there's no one to ask." The tension between them hung heavy in the air. Once inseparable, the siblings had grown apart after their parents' death. While Ilara threw herself into her work, Cale retreated into solitude, disillusioned with science and humanity's relentless pursuit of answers. Their arguments always circled back to this fundamental divide. Ilara believed in the possibility of connection, while Cale saw only emptiness. "You should come see the lab," Ilara said finally, changing the subject. "We've made progress." Cale hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but I'm not promising anything." The lab buzzed with activity when they arrived. Scientists moved between consoles, adjusting dials and monitoring screens filled with streams of data. At the center of it all stood the towering apparatus of Project Echo, a sleek, cylindrical device surrounded by intricate wiring and pulsating lights. It represented humanity's last best hope of breaking through the cosmic silence. "This is it," Ilara said, gesturing toward the machine. "Quantum entanglement communication, unlike traditional radio waves which take years to reach even nearby stars. This signal travels instantaneously. No delays, no interference. If anyone's out there, they'll hear us." Kyle circled the device skeptically. "And if they're not?" "Then we'll know we tried everything," Ilara replied, firmly. "But I refuse to believe we're alone." Her conviction was unwavering, but Cale couldn't help noticing the faint tremor in her voice. He softened slightly. "You really think this will work?" "It has to," she whispered, almost to herself. The days leading up to the activation of Project Echo were a whirlwind of preparation and debate. News of the project spread quickly, igniting both excitement and fear across the globe. Some hailed it as humanity's greatest achievement, a bold step toward finding companionship in the cosmos. Others warned of the dangers. What if the signal attracted hostile aliens? What if humanity wasn't ready for the consequences? Ilara faced these criticisms head-on during a televised press conference. Dressed in her usual professional attire, she addressed the cameras with calm authority. Yes, there are risks, she admitted, but staying silent carries its own risk, that we'll never know whether we're truly alone. Isn't it worth asking the question? Her words resonated with many, but not everyone was convinced. Protesters gathered outside the Aurora station, holding placards that read, "Don't wake the monsters and silence is safety." Security tightened around the facility, but Alara refused to let fear dictate her actions. As the launch date approached, tensions within the team grew palpable. Sleepless nights became the norm as final checks were performed on the equipment. Alara spent hours poring over calculations, double and triple checking every detail. She couldn't afford a mistake, not when so much was riding on this moment. On the eve of the activation, she found herself alone in the lab once again. The others had gone home to rest, but sleep eluded her. Instead, she sat at her desk, staring at a photograph of her family taken years ago. Her parents smiled warmly, their arms wrapped around young Alara and Kale. They'd always encouraged her curiosity, telling her the universe held infinite mysteries waiting to be unraveled. Now, as she prepared to send humanity's most daring message into the void, she wondered what they would say if they could see her now. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Looking up, she saw Kale standing in the doorway. He held 2 cups of coffee, offering one to her wordlessly. "I couldn't sleep either," he said, sitting down beside her. They drank in companionable silence for a while, the weight of tomorrow hanging between them. Finally, Kyle spoke. "Do you remember when we used to build rockets in the backyard?" Alara smiled faintly. "Of course. Dad helped us design them, and Mom pretended to be mission control. And we'd count down together." Kale trailed off, his expression nostalgic. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Alara joined in, her voice softening. 5, 4, 3. Their voices overlapped, growing quieter. 2, 1. They finished together, sharing a bittersweet laugh. For a moment, it felt like old times, before grief and ambition drove them apart. Then Kale set his cup down and looked at her seriously. "Promise me something, Alara. If this doesn't work, if the universe stays silent, you won't give up. Promise me you'll keep looking." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she nodded. "I promise." The morning of the activation dawned bright and clear. Crowds gathered outside the station, watching live feeds projected onto massive screens. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Alara stood at the main console, flanked by her team. Every eye was on her as she initiated the countdown. 10, 9, 8. Her voice echoed through the lab, steady and resolute. The world held its breath. 3, 2, 1. With a final keystroke, she activated Project Echo. The machine hummed to life, its core glowing with an otherworldly light. Data streamed outward, carrying humanity's simple yet profound message. "We are here. Are you?" For a long moment, nothing happened. The room was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of machinery. Then, slowly, the scientists began to relax. Cheers erupted as the signal successfully transmitted. Alara exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and exhilaration. They had done it. They had reached out into the void. Whether or not anyone heard, they had taken the first step. Days turned into weeks, and still, no response came. Hope began to wane, replaced by disappointment and frustration. Critics pointed to the failure as proof that humanity's efforts were futile. Even some members of Alara's team started to lose faith. But Alara refused to give up. Late one night, as she reviewed the data for the 100th time, she noticed something peculiar. A faint distortion in the quantum field, almost imperceptible. Her heart raced as she zoomed in on the anomaly. Could it be? Before she could investigate further, alarms blared throughout the station. Rushing to the main screen, she froze at what she saw. A small object, drifting near Neptune, had emitted a signal of its own. It contained a single word. Why? The discovery sent shockwaves through humanity. For weeks after the transmission of Project Echo, hope had dwindled to near extinction. Scientists and citizens alike had resigned themselves to yet another failure, another unanswered call into the void. But now an alien artifact drifting silently near Neptune, emitting a single word encoded in binary. Why? Ilara stood frozen in front of the main screen in the lab, her mind racing. The word was simple, almost mundane, yet it carried an unsettling weight. Why? Why what? Why were they here? Why had they called out? Or perhaps, why did they exist at all? Behind her, the room erupted into chaos. Her team scrambled to analyze the signal, voices overlapping as they debated its origin and meaning. Some argued it was a natural phenomenon, a glitch in the data. Others insisted it was proof of intelligent life, a deliberate response to Earth's broadcast. Kale appeared at her side, his face pale but alert. "What does it mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ilara shook her head, still staring at the screen. "I don't know, but it's real. That probe, it's not human-made." Her words silenced the room momentarily. Then, like a dam breaking, the implications flooded in. If this was truly evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence, it would change everything. Humanity would no longer be alone in the universe, but what kind of company awaited them? Global reaction news of the discovery spread faster than light itself, thanks to instant global communication networks. Within hours, every news outlet, social media platform, and government channel was ablaze with speculation. Religious leaders declared it divine intervention. Conspiracy theorists claimed it was a hoax orchestrated by shadowy organizations. Governments convened emergency summits, debating how to respond, or whether to respond at all. Public opinion fractured along predictable lines. Optimists saw the message as an invitation, a chance for humanity to join a greater galactic community. Pessimists warned of danger, citing countless science fiction tales where first contact ended in catastrophe. Protests erupted worldwide, some demanding immediate action, others pleading for caution. Amid the turmoil, Ilara became both hero and scapegoat. To many, she was the visionary who had finally broken the silence. To others, she was reckless, having potentially endangered humanity by initiating contact. Death threats poured in alongside fan mail, forcing security measures around the Aurora station to escalate dramatically. Through it all, Ilara remained focused. She locked herself in the lab, poring over every byte of data from the probe. Its design was unlike anything humanity had ever created. Smooth, metallic, and devoid of visible markings. It emitted no heat signature, suggesting advanced cloaking technology. Most baffling was its trajectory. It hadn't come from any known star system but seemed to have been adrift in the solar system for centuries, waiting. Deciphering the message as days turned into weeks, Ilara grew increasingly obsessed with understanding the probe's purpose. The word "why" haunted her thoughts, gnawing at the edges of her consciousness. What question were they supposed to answer? And why had the probe waited so long to respond? Kale joined her in the effort, reluctantly pulled back into the world of science he'd abandoned years ago. His expertise proved invaluable, particularly when he suggested analyzing the probe's quantum resonance patterns. Using algorithms he'd developed during his own research, they uncovered fragments of additional data hidden within the artifact's core. "These aren't random signals," Kale said one night, pointing to a series of complex equations displayed on the screen. "They're coordinates." Ilara leaned closer, her pulse quickening. "Coordinates to where?" "To somewhere far beyond our galaxy," Kale replied grimly. "Billions of light years away." The revelation sent a chill down Ilara's spine. Whoever, or whatever, had sent the probe wasn't just testing humanity's ability to communicate. They were inviting them to journey into the unknown. The debate. The discovery of the coordinates reignited the debate about humanity's next move. Should they send a manned mission to investigate? Or leave the mystery untouched, preserving the fragile piece of ignorance? Ilara argued passionately for exploration. "This is our chance to find answers," she told a packed assembly of world leaders. To understand our place in the universe, we can't turn away now. But opposition was fierce. Military advisors warned of potential traps, citing the Fermi paradox, the idea that intelligent life might avoid contact because it posed existential risks. Ethicists questioned whether humanity was ready to face such profound truths. Even members of her own team expressed doubts, fearing the psychological toll of deep space travel. Kyle, too, voiced concerns. You're talking about sending people billions of light years away based on a single word, he said during a heated argument in the lab. What if it's a test? What if we fail? And what if it's exactly what we've been searching for? Ilara countered. An opportunity to connect, to learn something greater than ourselves? Their arguments often devolved into shouting matches, echoing the strained dynamic of their childhood. Yet, despite their differences, Kale couldn't deny the spark of curiosity reignited within him. He began spending more time in the lab, helping Ilara refine their analysis of the probe's data. Slowly, tentatively, their bond began to mend. Midpoint revelation. After months of painstaking work, Ilara and her team made a breakthrough. By cross-referencing the probe's quantum signatures with historical astronomical records, they identified similar anomalies scattered throughout the galaxy. Each anomaly corresponded to a location where ancient probes had been discovered, some dating back millennia. These weren't isolated incidents, Ilara realized aloud, pacing the lab. Whoever sent this message has been reaching out for centuries, maybe even longer. But why us? Kyle asked. Why now? Ilara stopped, turning to face him. Because we finally asked the right question. Her certainty was infectious, galvanizing the team to push forward. Together they pieced together fragments of information embedded in the probe's code, revealing glimpses of a vast network spanning the cosmos. These probes weren't just messengers, they were nodes in a larger system designed to observe and record civilizations capable of interstellar communication. And then came the final revelation. The destination marked by the coordinates wasn't merely a location. It was a construct, a colossal artificial structure orbiting a dying star. According to the data, it served as a repository of knowledge, holding the collective wisdom of countless extinct civilizations. Decision. With the full scope of the discovery laid bare, humanity faced its greatest decision. Governments convened a historic summit, weighing the risks and rewards of embarking on such a perilous journey. In the end, the choice fell to Ilara and her team. As the architects of Project Echo, they would lead the mission, if they chose to accept it. Ilara didn't hesitate. We have to go, she declared. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who's ever looked up at the stars and wondered. Kale watched her, pride and apprehension warring in his expression. Finally, he nodded. Then I'm coming with you. Preparation. The announcement sparked renewed excitement and fear across the globe. Dubbed Exodus Initiative, the mission would require unprecedented resources and innovation. A new generation of starships would need to be built, equipped with cutting-edge propulsion systems and AI capable of navigating uncharted space. Ilara threw herself into preparations, working tirelessly to assemble a crew and develop protocols for the journey. Kale proved an invaluable ally, leveraging his expertise to design fail-safe mechanisms for the ship's systems. Their partnership evolved from sibling rivalry to a shared sense of purpose, each drawing strength from the other. Yet, beneath the surface, anxiety simmered. Both knew the odds of success were slim. The distance alone was daunting, let alone the unknown dangers lurking in the void. Still, they pressed on, driven by the belief that humanity's future depended on finding answers. Final moments on the ROM. Eve of departure, Ilara returned to the observation deck of the Aurora station. The stars stretched endlessly before her, indifferent to the hopes and fears of those below. She thought of all the lives touched by this moment. Her parents, whose love of science had inspired her, the billions counting on her to bring back answers, and Kyle, standing beside her once again. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "That we're about to take the biggest leap humanity has ever made," she replied. "And I'm terrified." Kyle smiled faintly. "Me too, but we'll face it together." As they gazed at the horizon, the first rays of dawn illuminated the launch pad where the starship Eos awaited its maiden voyage. Tomorrow, humanity would embark on a journey into the unknown, guided by a single question: why? The launch of the Eos marked a new chapter in humanity's history, a bold step into the cosmos, driven by hope, curiosity, and an unrelenting desire to find answers. The starship was a marvel of engineering, its sleek design housing state-of-the-art propulsion systems, artificial gravity generators, and advanced AI capable of navigating the vast expanse of space. Yet for all its technological prowess, it carried something far more fragile: human hearts yearning for connection. Elara stood on the bridge as the ship broke free from Earth's orbit, her hands gripping the console tightly. Behind her, the crew bustled about, running final checks and ensuring every system functioned flawlessly. Among them was Kale, his expression unreadable as he monitored the ship's quantum entanglement communicator, a fail-safe line back to Earth, though everyone knew communication delays would render it useless beyond a certain distance. "Engines at full power," announced Captain Rhea Calderon, the mission commander. Course plotted for the coordinates. Elara nodded, her gaze fixed on the view screen. The stars stretched endlessly before them, indifferent witnesses to humanity's first steps into the unknown. As the ship accelerated toward its destination, she felt a mixture of exhilaration and dread. They were leaving behind everything familiar, venturing billions of light years away to confront questions that might not have answers, and dangers they couldn't yet imagine. Strange phenomena weeks turned into months as the Eos traveled deeper into uncharted territory. Life aboard the ship settled into a rhythm of routine, punctuated by moments of awe and terror. The crew marveled at nebulae glowing like cosmic jewels, gas giants with swirling storms larger than Earth, and asteroid fields glittering like scattered diamonds. But these wonders were accompanied by increasingly bizarre phenomena. One night, Elara woke to find the lights in her quarters flickering erratically. She stepped into the corridor only to see shadows moving where no one stood. When she called out, the ship's AI responded calmly, assuring her that all systems were functioning normally. Yet the unease lingered, creeping into her dreams. Others reported similar experiences. Chief Engineer Malik claimed he'd seen ghostly figures walking through the engine room, their forms dissolving when approached. Biologist Dr. Priya Nair described vivid hallucinations of Earth, a lush green forest she hadn't visited since childhood. Even KL admitted to hearing whispers in languages he didn't recognize. "It's the void," Kyle said during one particularly tense meeting. "We're traveling farther than anyone ever has. Maybe this part of space affects the mind." Elara frowned. "Or maybe it's the construct. It could be probing us, testing our resolve." Captain Calderon raised an eyebrow. "Testing for what? To see if we're worthy?" "No," Elara replied firmly. "To see if we're ready." Her theory divided the crew. Some found comfort in the idea that they were being observed by a higher intelligence, while others grew paranoid, convinced they were being manipulated or even hunted. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. Fragments of the past. As the journey progressed, the crew began uncovering fragments of data embedded in the probe's signal. These fragments painted a haunting picture of civilizations long extinct, species who had reached out into the cosmos, only to vanish without explanation. Each fragment was accompanied by a variation of the same question: why? In one recording, a voice spoke in a language neither human nor machine-like, its tone mournful yet urgent. In another, images flashed across screens: a city crumbling under alien skies, a star exploding in slow motion, a child reaching toward the heavens. These weren't just messages, Kyle murmured, as they analyzed the data. They were warnings. Elara nodded grimly. Warnings about what? That's what we need to find out, she said, her voice tinged with determination. Whatever happened to them, we can't let it happen to us. Yet the weight of the discoveries took its toll. Crew members struggled with insomnia, anxiety, and paranoia. Arguments erupted over minor issues, straining relationships. Even Alara and Kale found themselves clashing more frequently, their shared purpose unable to fully bridge the emotional scars of their past. The construct appears after nearly 2 years of travel. The EOS approached the coordinates. What awaited them defied comprehension. At first, it appeared as a faint glimmer on the edge of their sensors, a shimmering orb hovering near a dying star. As they drew closer, the construct revealed itself in all its majesty. It was colossal, its surface etched with fractal patterns that shifted and pulsed like living code. Light radiated from within, casting an ethereal glow across the surrounding void. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Nair, her voice filled with wonder. "And terrifying," muttered Malik, his hand resting uneasily on the controls. Alara stared at the construct, her heart pounding. This was it, the culmination of centuries of searching, decades of research, and countless sacrifices. Whatever secrets lay inside, they were about to uncover them. Captain Calderon guided the ship cautiously toward the construct, scanning for any signs of hostility. To their relief, there were none. Instead, the construct seemed to respond to their presence, opening a massive portal in its side. A beam of light extended outward, enveloping the EOS and pulling it inside. Inside the construct, the transition was disorienting. One moment, they were surrounded by the cold emptiness of space. The next, they found themselves in a surreal environment where reality bent and twisted around them. Walls shimmered with iridescent hues, floors rippled like liquid, and gravity fluctuated unpredictably. Time itself seemed distorted, with moments stretching and contracting at random. "This isn't physical space," Kyle said, his voice trembling. "It's something else." The construct communicated directly with their minds, bypassing language barriers entirely. Memories surfaced unbidden. Childhood joys, heartbreaks, triumphs, failures. Visions of humanity's history unfolded. Before them, wars waged over land and ideology, acts of kindness and cruelty, dreams of unity and fears of annihilation. Alara realized the construct wasn't merely observing, it was learning. It sought to understand humanity not through logic alone, but through emotion, memory, and experience. And in doing so, it forced them to confront truths they'd rather ignore. Midpoint revelation, as the visions intensified, Alara saw glimpses of other species who had come here before. Some had arrived brimming with arrogance, believing themselves superior to the cosmos. Others had come seeking salvation, desperate to escape their own destruction. All had failed, not because the construct rejected them, but because they couldn't answer the central question: why? Why are we here? Alara whispered aloud, tears streaming down her face. Why do we exist? For the first time, she understood the true nature of the construct. It wasn't a repository of knowledge or a test of worthiness. It was a mirror, reflecting the essence of those who dared to seek it. The civilizations that succeeded weren't the strongest or the smartest. They were the ones who embraced uncertainty, who accepted responsibility for their place in the universe. Kyle appeared beside her, his expression raw with emotion. "Do you think we're ready?" he asked quietly. Alara hesitated, then nodded. "I don't know, but we have to try." Climactic moment. The construct responded to her resolve, shifting once again. Before them loomed a massive chamber, its walls lined with crystalline structures pulsating with light. At its center floated a sphere of pure energy radiating warmth and calm. "This is it," Alara said, stepping forward. "This is where we find our answer." But as she reached out to touch the sphere, a surge of doubt washed over her. What if they weren't ready? What if the truth shattered them? Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. "Together," he said simply. Taking a deep breath, Alara pressed her palm against the sphere. A flood of knowledge surged into her mind, overwhelming yet strangely comforting. She saw the interconnectedness of all things, the delicate balance of creation and destruction, life and death, chaos and order, and then clarity. The moment Alara touched the crystalline sphere, her consciousness expanded beyond the confines of her body. Time ceased to exist. Space dissolved into an endless expanse of light and thought. She wasn't alone. Kale stood beside her, their minds intertwined as they shared the experience. Around them, fragments of existence swirled like stardust, each particle representing a memory, an emotion, or a truth. At first, the influx of knowledge was overwhelming. Civilizations rose and fell before her eyes, their triumphs and failures etched into the fabric of reality. She saw species who had mastered technology only to destroy themselves, others who achieved harmony with their environments, but succumbed to entropy. Each story carried echoes of the same question: why? But amidst the chaos, patterns emerged. The construct wasn't merely a repository of information, it was a living entity, a collective consciousness formed from the remnants of countless extinct civilizations. These beings had merged their essence into the construct, seeking answers to existence's greatest mysteries. Over millennia they had waited, watching silently as new species emerged and reached out into the void. Alara realized the construct wasn't offering solutions. It was asking humanity to define its own purpose. By reaching out, humanity had proven it was ready to take responsibility for its place in the cosmos. The question wasn't meant to be answered externally. It was a call to introspection. The revelation, as the flood of knowledge subsided, Alara found herself back in the chamber, kneeling on the shimmering floor. Kale crouched beside her, his face pale but resolute. The rest of the crew remained outside, unable to enter the sacred space. Only those willing to confront the deepest truths of existence could bear witness to what lay within. "Did you see it?" Kyle asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "It's not about finding someone else to tell us why we're here. It's about deciding for ourselves." She looked at him, her expression raw with emotion. "We've been searching for meaning in the wrong places. The universe doesn't owe us answers. It's up to us to create them." Kyle hesitated, then placed a hand on her shoulder. "You always believed there was something out there. Turns out you were right. But maybe the something isn't what we expected." Alara smiled faintly, her heart swelling with gratitude, not just for the revelation but for Kale's presence. Despite their differences, he had stood by her through everything, reminding her of the importance of connection and shared purpose. Returning home, the journey back to Earth felt both impossibly long and startlingly brief. Time inside the construct had distorted their perception, leaving them unsure how much had passed. When the EOS finally re-entered familiar space, the crew erupted into cheers, overwhelmed by relief and anticipation. Yet for Alara and Kale, the return carried a weight far greater than mere survival. They brought with them recordings of their experiences, fragments of the construct's wisdom encoded in quantum signals. Though they knew no recording could fully capture the depth of what they'd witnessed, they hoped it would inspire humanity to reflect on its role in the universe. As the ship approached Earth, global broadcasts lit up screens across the planet. Billions watched as the EOS descended, its sleek form glowing against the backdrop of the blue-green orb below. When the hatch opened and the crew stepped onto the tarmac, they were greeted by thunderous applause. Scientists, politicians, and ordinary citizens alike crowded around, eager to hear their story. Alara stood at the forefront, flanked by Kale and Captain Calderon. Her voice trembled as she addressed the world, recounting their journey and the lessons they'd learned. "We went searching for answers," she said, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "What we found instead was a mirror, a reflection of ourselves. The universe didn't give us meaning. It showed us that meaning comes from within." Her words resonated deeply, sparking a wave of introspection across the globe. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars for salvation, believing that contact with extraterrestrial life would provide clarity. Now they understood that the true challenge lay not in finding others, but in understanding themselves. Personal transformation. In the weeks following their return, Ilara and Kale retreated to a quiet lakeside cabin, needing time to process their experiences. The bond they had forged during the mission continued to grow, healing wounds that had festered for years. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Kale spoke softly. "Do you think we'll ever stop asking questions?" Ilara smiled, gazing into the flames. "I hope not. Questions are what drive us forward. Answers aren't always meant to satisfy, they're meant to inspire." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe the universe stays silent because it wants us to keep talking, to keep searching, even when it feels hopeless." She reached over, squeezing his hand. "And maybe silence isn't emptiness, maybe it's potential." Their conversation drifted into comfortable silence, the crackling fire filling the void between words. Both knew their lives would never be the same. They had seen too much, felt too deeply. But they also knew they had gained something invaluable. Perspective. Global impact back on Earth. The impact of the mission rippled through every facet of society. Governments collaborated on unprecedented scales, prioritizing unity over division. Religious leaders incorporated the mission's findings into sermons, emphasizing themes of interconnectedness and responsibility. Artists created works inspired by the construct's fractal beauty, while scientists delved deeper into quantum mechanics, seeking to replicate the phenomena they had encountered. Most profoundly, humanity began to shift its focus inward. Efforts to combat climate change intensified, driven by a renewed sense of stewardship for the planet. Social justice movements gained momentum, fueled by the realization that humanity's survival depended on cooperation rather than conflict. Education systems evolved to emphasize critical thinking and empathy, preparing future generations to navigate the complexities of existence. Ilara became a symbol of this transformation, traveling the world to share her insights. Though she resisted being hailed as a hero, her humility only endeared her to people more. Kale joined her on many speaking tours, his skepticism tempered by newfound optimism. Together, they inspired millions to embrace uncertainty and strive for growth. Final reflection. Years later, Ilara returned to the observation deck of the Aurora station, now converted into a museum commemorating humanity's journey into the cosmos. She gazed at Earth once again, marveling at how much had changed since her first moments here. Cities glowed brighter, powered by clean energy. Forests sprawled farther, nurtured by sustainable practices. Humanity hadn't solved all its problems, but it had taken bold steps toward a better future. Behind her, a child tugged at her sleeve. "Dr. Voss," he said shyly, "do you really think we'll ever meet aliens?" Ilara knelt to his level, smiling warmly. "Maybe. But remember, the most important discovery we made wasn't about them, it was about us. We learned that the universe stays silent because it trusts us to find our own answers." The boy nodded thoughtfully, then turned his gaze skyward. Above, the stars twinkled silently, vast and unknowable yet brimming with possibility. As Ilara watched him, she felt a surge of hope. Humanity had faced the void and emerged stronger, not because it had found definitive answers, but because it had embraced the act of questioning itself. The universe might remain silent, but within that silence lay infinite potential.